Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. For those of you joining us for the first time, welcome to City Awake. My name is Hannah Zinn. I'm Senior Program Manager for the Boston Chamber of Commerce. City Awake is the young professional platform for the Boston Chamber. Through our City Awake programming, we work to engage and elevate young professional voices to engage in the most pressing issues facing our region today. One of my favorite parts of City Awake is that we get to celebrate the incredible young talent that our greater Boston has to offer, like today's panelists. Today, we'll be hearing from local civic leaders who are making an incredible impact on our political environment. These conversations would not be possible without our sponsor, Bar Foundation. Before we get started, I would like to flag that today's webinar is being recorded and will be posted to YouTube within the coming weeks. I also want to encourage you to utilize the chat and Q&A function. We want to make sure that we hear all of your questions. We also will be sending out polls throughout the meeting. Be sure to engage in those too. Partnering with us today for our program is Spark Boston. I'm more than happy to introduce Audrey Serafin, the director for Spark. Audrey will share a bit about Spark and what their goals are, as well as the goals for today's conversation. With that, I'll toss it to you, Audrey.
Thank you so much, Hannah, and good morning, everyone. At Spark Boston, we actively engage young people to help the city of Boston set priorities, address issues, and plan for our future. Our focus is centered around connecting people from all Boston neighborhoods and walks of life to build relationships and networks, rethink civic engagement, and empower the next generation of civic leaders in our city. I am very excited to be able to open today's program on this historic morning, the first in Boston's long history when a Black woman woke up and went to work on the 5th floor of City Hall as the most powerful person in the building. Congratulations to both the U.S.'s newest Secretary of Labor, Martin J. Walsh, and Boston's 55th Mayor, Roxbury's own Kim Janey. It's a great day to represent Boston, and I am so thrilled that I get to spend it with all of you. The last year has been filled with seemingly endless challenges, not the least of which has been working with government at all levels to better serve the people, all people. A new generation of leaders is on the rise, rising to the challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic, our nation's white supremacist past, and to so much more. Spark Boston's base, 20 to 35-year-old residents of the city, make up almost 40% of the population here, but until recently have been virtually invisible in seats of power. We have an incredible group of people with us today who not only began this work as young people themselves, but continue to fight for future generations and work directly with young people to make lasting change for everyone. Each of our panelists do a little something different, so I'm going to let you all introduce yourselves. We'll have each of our panelists come on camera to get started. First, I'd like to welcome Paul Schmid, who is our moderator for today's program and an associate at Arent Fox. Hi, Paul.
Hey, good morning, Audrey, and thanks. My name is Paul Schmid. I'm an attorney at Arent Fox, which is a law firm in Boston. I represent business owners who are getting ready for the sale of their business. I help them with the legal aspects of these sales and often help them transition to a new venture. I'm born and raised in Boston, and I'm a member of the board of City Awake. I'm especially excited for today's panel because before I became a lawyer, I worked in Washington, D.C. for 7 years for members of Congress and advised them on transportation and environment policy.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Paul. Welcome. Next, we have Natalia Urtubey, Director of Small Business for the City of Boston and a proud Spark Boston alum. Hi, Natalia.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Just a quick thank you to City Awake and the incredible work that you guys do, Audrey at Spark Boston, and obviously the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce. I'm so excited to be here to chat about the work that we've done at the City of Boston for small businesses, not just during the pandemic, but over the course of the last couple of years. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. Thank you, Natalia. Next, let's hear from my boss, Aisha Miller, Chief of Civic Engagement for the City of Boston. Hi, Chief Miller.
Good morning, Audrey. Yes, my name is Aisha Miller, and I am the Chief of Civic Engagement. And in that capacity, I advise the mayor on efforts to preserve and enhance the quality of services delivered to the City of Boston. In that role, I oversee the Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Services, Mayor's Office of Public Service and Engagement, Boston's 311, and Spark Boston. Thank you to all. Thank you to the Greater Boston Commerce. And specifically, I want to shout out Allison Weiss, who invited me to participate in this panel. Thank you.
Aisha. And thank you, last but certainly not least, we have Tony Richards, Deputy Chief of Staff, Access and Opportunity for the Massachusetts Governor's Office. Hi, Tony. Sorry for butchering that.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for having me. Tony Richards, husband, father of two beautiful girls, residing in Dorchester, born and raised in Boston. Professionally, I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff at the Governor's Office, and I manage the Office of Access and Opportunity, which essentially is diversity, equity, and inclusion for state government, both on the workforce side and also contracting and procurement. And I'm glad to be here. Thanks, Spark Boston again, and Boston Chamber of Commerce for putting together this amazing group.
And thank all of you again for joining us. And that includes you, audience. So if you'd like to stay in touch with Spark Boston, please check out our page at boston.gov/spark or on social media at Spark Boston on Facebook and Twitter and at SparkBoss, BOS on Instagram. With that, I'll pass it over to Paul to get this conversation started. Have a great day, everybody.
Great. Thanks, Audrey. I'm really happy to be part of this. And I wanted to start with a general question for all three of you. In your professional lives, each of you focus on making government work better and be more inclusive for diverse people. So let's start on a personal level. Why is a mission of diversity, equity, and inclusion important to you? Tony, can we start with you?
Yeah, sure. I think the easy answer, which I know a lot of folks will say, is, representation matters. You can't be what you can't see. So I think that's the diversity part, and a little bit about the inclusion part. But I've kind of been drawn to this work by the work and impact of my family. So I think just growing up, being in places and spaces where we may have not been invited, or just carved out. So many people of color in the city carve out places and spaces that are convenient for them to kind of just grow and lead. But I think the diversity from a professional aspect is so important, because there's a bunch of different studies, there's a bunch of different data that shows a diverse workforce is just more increases your profitability. There's so many key indicators. But I mean, people of color are biased because it's when you have a system and a model that is built that essentially doesn't support us, we try to continue to push on the glass ceiling and find places and spaces where we can grow. So that's a little bit about it. I want to make sure to, hear from some of the ladies on the panel as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So building on what Tony said, I mean, obviously representation matters, and it's really important to see ourselves in those spaces. But I also think it's really important that we're bringing in different perspectives and experiences into those same work environments, because I think, when you are able to see the world from a different point of view, you're able to come up with creative solutions, you're able to brainstorm differently, you're able to actually see those options in different ways. And I think it also allows us to make sure that no one is left out of the decision-making process, right? So when it's the same people thinking about the same things in the same ways, you tend to get the same solutions and the same results. But when you're able to bring in different ideas, perspectives, experiences, whether they're multi-generational, whether they're multi, immigrant backgrounds, whether they're multiracial, whether they're from different socioeconomic statuses, I think all of these different perspectives help us build a better future, helps us build better solutions that actually can impact all kinds of people and not just, the people in the room.
Hi, so Natalia and Tony pretty much expressed why it's important. But just for me, I think that it's important for people that I grew up with to be able to see that this work is important and it's just not in vain. We can speak about it, talk about it, but until they actually see actionable items and people actually moving up, and what we call diversity, equity, inclusion, and being part of the conversations. I always tell people, well, sometimes you may not be at the table, but if your name is in the room, that's just as important as well. And so I'm proud to work and being more involved in this work since my recent appointment, and just bringing people from the neighborhood to the discussions and to the conversations and building an equitable city. That's
great. You know, these goals have not always been our goals of our city and our state. We have a very unfortunate history of racial disparity in Boston and throughout the state. So this is a change for us. How do you all think this change has occurred? You know, why does politics now prioritize diversity and inclusion?
Well, I guess I'll jump in first. I think that currently politicians are paying more attention to diversity, equity, inclusion. I think that in essence, when people think about diversity, they assume it's like one race, one gender, or what have you. And I think now more politicians are paying more attention to what exactly means for diversity, equity, inclusion. Mayor Martin J. Walsh, former Mayor Martin J. Walsh, created the Equity Cabinet and appointed Dr. Carolyn Crockett to as the chief. And that cabinet includes existing departments, Resilience and Race Equity, Diversity, Human Rights Commission, Women's Advancement and Immigrant Advancement, Language and Communication Access. And I believe by him listening and listening to people who were well versed in the area, in that topic, listening to colleagues, listening to the employees of the city of Boston, he was able to start making changes. And so I believe that politicians are now starting to just understand, based off of different occurrences in the last year or so, to make those pipelines for people of color.
Yeah, and just to add, I would also say that this stuff doesn't happen overnight. You know, Mayor Walsh, at least from the time that I've been at City Hall, has been building towards this. You know, hiring people of color, hiring women, promoting people from within. Those things have mattered, because if it had just started this year, we would be in a very different place today. And so I think, you know, what seems like something that's happening right now, or something that, you know, is just like the popular thing now, takes many, many, many years to build. You can't actually build diversity, equity, and inclusion in your office if you haven't been thinking about it. And that's why we're seeing so many, you know, things about people doing it wrong, right? You're not bringing people in to help you build it. And I think, you know, obviously Mayor Walsh, former Mayor Walsh, now Secretary of Labor, has been thinking about this from as long as I can remember. I met him, you know, nearly 10 years ago when I moved to Boston, and that desire to make sure that the legacy of Boston isn't one built on racism, that isn't one that continues to promote racism and racial, you know, policies, I think is something that may look like it's just happening overnight. You know, as we look at some of the current policies, this has been building for the tenure of his administration. And I think across the city, not just in kind of the capital city of Boston, like the city employees, I think it has been happening for quite some time. It just hasn't had as much visibility. And that, I think, is what makes the leadership, you know, at the chamber, the leadership, you know, at the Commonwealth, the leadership at some of the largest institutions in Boston, that's what is making those kind of that needle move at a faster pace now, was because it has been building over time. I am not saying that it has been perfect. I am not saying it has been done, you know, truly in the spirit of what it should be. What I'm saying is that it could not have just happened this year. And I think anyone who thinks that D&I is just important all of a sudden, is probably only seeing the headlines today. And I think that work that many activists, many advocates, many, employees, again, not just at the city of Boston, but employees across the Commonwealth have been building on this for some time. And now I think this is the right lever that has created that shift to be able to make stuff happen in a more rapid and equitable way.
Let's talk about that transition in the mayor's office. Today is an incredibly timely time for us to be talking. We wake up with a new mayor, first woman, first person of color to hold that office. What a momentous day. And we're coming forward to a mayor's election in which we already have a very diverse group of candidates. Natalia and Aisha, you work for the city. What do you see? How do you see things transitioning under a new mayor, and what opportunities does this transition provide?
Well, the transition has been going on for the last 7 to 8 weeks. I was joking with Mayor Walsh, like this is the longest goodbye I think I've ever experienced in my life. And so there has been a transition period, and Mayor Walsh engaged all of us on his cabinet to ensure that Mayor Janey was equipped and understood all things in this realm that we work in during this transfer, and to make sure this was a seamless transition for the residents of the city of Boston. Mayor Janey is qualified. She's eager. I got off the Zoom with her earlier, and she's ready to take on this challenge. She has a existing cabinet and new cabinet folks that are making up her team, and she's ready to continue the work of the people. And she's going to build and make her mark, and she's going to continue to serve this city in the role as mayor, and supporting an equitable recovery during this continued pandemic, and taking what her vision is and building on what already exists. So I anticipate nothing but greatness.
Yeah, I want to echo what the chief just said. I think we've been preparing for this transition for some time, and I think everyone who works in government is not there to serve necessarily one person, but rather the people of Boston. And it is very clear to me that our work continues. Obviously, Mayor Janey will have priorities. She will have things that are more important for her vision for the city, and will bring those up to the top. But I don't think it changes the everyday work of the incredible city of Boston employees. And that's something that, I'm really excited about, because it does give us the opportunity to think creatively and do new things under new leadership. But it also continues to promote the work that we've been doing for not just this year, which, now feels like the most important thing we've ever done is what we've done during the pandemic, but it does allow us to continue the work. And we're here to support her and make sure that her vision is executed and that we can continue working.
Great. I think one thing I want to say, which is a different perspective, is I just want to reiterate how important you really can't be what you can't see. So, just as the father of, 2 Black daughters, and having a conversation with my oldest about, just opportunities, right? When we talk about, just when you expand on not only what do you want to be when you grow up, but how are you going to get there? And just the tough conversations of not only when you celebrate the first, but the tough conversations of why it's the first, right? So when, hey, it's 2021 and we've just had the first Black mayor, right? And just to walk through, the social justice warriors and the advocates, and, so many people who have, carried so much on their back to push things forward for the next generation like us to continue to carry. So I think today it was most, selfishly, I had a good ride, to drop off my daughter at school, because she was just empowered about, what her possibilities can be, which is just a different perspective, just around like the logistical change. So I think, that's important as well. So that's why, today is so significant in so many different ways.
Yeah, that's great, Tony. Thanks for that perspective. Tony, I want to stick with you. Let's take this from the city level to the state level. You're a key member of Governor Baker's leadership team, and you've been involved with enhancing economic prosperity and equity for Black and Latino communities. What is it like being involved in a big initiative such as DE&I across the entire state?
So the state, we live in an interesting state where, just growing up in Boston, a lot of us, are really Boston-centric, Eastern Massachusetts-centric. Massachusetts is a fairly, large state. I think, one of the, things that I appreciate is a lot of the key impact areas around the state, gateway cities, communities of color. There are so many the Black community and Latino community and people of color, we're not a monolithic community. There's so many, different, types of careers and, different types of people, within, the category of, Blacks and other people of color. But I think most recently, just managing the small business, grant fund, the sector specific grant fund. I think that's, small businesses, as we all know, 2020, huge shutdown, a huge economic halt for a lot of businesses. And, just working statewide and just, understanding, small businesses, from a different footprint than the city of Boston and how folks are thriving. And, we want to talk about the engine of the economy. There are so many folks that, are just really, driving their main streets and other neighborhoods and other communities that are significant. A lot of those businesses, when they shut down, a lot of those small towns or other areas shut down as well. So I think, access to capital has been huge. And we see, key indicators that are showing, fairly moderate success as far as, small businesses, bringing back on, a significant portion of their workforce and getting people back to work, because essentially a lot of it is about resources. And, some of the, opportunities related to the small business fund have probably been, a lot more near and dear to me, because you get the anecdotal examples. The data and the dashboard and the key indicators are one thing, but when you speak to somebody who, owns a auto body shop or a florist and, and they're like, hey, without this money, we were already shut down. We probably weren't going to open back up. So when we think about like emerging industries and, the economic, train getting back on track, if people of color aren't like continuously, being engaged and being active, it's going to take a while for us to get back into the game, right? So I think, that's one of the, biggest things that, I've been working on lately that, has just been really gratifying and important.
Natalia, you also spend your days thinking about small businesses. How are small businesses in Boston doing, and how are they coping with the impacts of COVID-19?
That is the question of the year. So I think for us, I'm hopeful that small businesses know that the city of Boston is a partner to them and that we're here to support them throughout this pandemic. I think very early on in the pandemic, we didn't know what people needed right away, right? It was a lot of chaos, a lot of panic, a lot of fear. And what our team has been doing from the very beginning, from the first day of the shutdown, was communicating with small business owners about the resources and the work that our office was doing to help them and to support them. We started small business conference calls on a weekly basis that we've kept going for the entirety of this year. We put out surveys to actually find out what people needed. And immediately our response was, how do we serve what people need and not what we think that they need? And so by hearing from folks about, needing cash relief and not being able to take on additional debt through loans and things like that, it really helped shape our response and our strategy for helping people through the pandemic. Again, the reason I say this is because back in April of last year, no one knew that there was a relief package coming from the federal government. We didn't know what was going on. We were trying to figure out, how do we repurpose the rest of our funds that exist in our team to help people? What does that look like? Obviously, now we know that there's relief. We've been able to get out $16 million out the door that goes into the hands of small businesses. All of that has been shaped by us listening to what the needs are. I think where we are today versus where we were in April or even in July, August, when we're seeing kind of the first big impacts of the economic loss, I think we are focused on that recovery. We're focused on how do we move beyond COVID-19 and the pandemic and move into recovery. So our focus, I think the status of small businesses is we've seen local small businesses, neighborhood businesses be able to innovate and be creative and thrive. We've also seen, the devastating impacts of our economic centers of the city, those small businesses being impacted in a really harsh way. So we're trying to think about what does that recovery look like? How do we help businesses in specific industries or specific geographic areas of the city to ensure that our response is really reflective of the needs of the people of the city of Boston.
Aisha, you've been nodding your head. Tell us your opinion of this.
Natalia has done an excellent job in ensuring that the business owners or small businesses and restaurants participate in all of the city programs in order to keep their restaurants going. My job is to I'm a bridge between the residents and the city of Boston. And so therefore, Natalia putting out these opportunities, these programs, and creating spaces where people can actually speak and talk, that was my job to make sure that they understood the information and the resources were there. I was able to go to a lot of small businesses last year after they rolled out the outdoor dining. In my last capacity as Assistant Commissioner of Constituent Services at Inspectional Services Department, and to see the satisfaction on a lot of restaurant owners and feeling as a sense of purpose and encouraging people to go to restaurants, particularly locally, and people of color who were and all the ethnic foods that are afforded to us, and encouraging people to go. And then I go and do how great this food is. And so my bridge with the residents or restaurant owners and Natalia's great work in this field and combined together, collaboration. So as I mentioned, being in inspectional services and working with the health department and working with Natalia to ensure that if restaurant owners wanted to take or participate in this program, they were able to do so. I had the distinct pleasure of helping a young man named Royal who was able to do something in Nubian Square through inspectional services. So I think that the city did an excellent job. I think the state did an excellent job, and it was all working collaboratively together to ensure that folks had a fighting chance.
Natalia, I want to come back to you with a question. Most of the folks who are listening in to this panel are young professionals. What can they all do? What can we all do to support small businesses during this difficult time?
That is a great question. And I think, I'm going to say the cliche thing, which is, everyone needs to shop locally. You need to go and explore Boston. Our city is filled with incredible nooks and crannies of businesses all over the city. If you live in Rosendale, you should be going to East Boston. If you live in Alston, Brighton, hang out in Nubian Square. It's so important that people really take the opportunity to explore locally what our businesses have to offer. We have an incredible program called the Boston Main Streets, where we have 20 districts. We also have districts that are, commercial districts that are not main streets that obviously also have incredible businesses. So it's very easy for me to say, shop locally. I will be coming back to Spark and City Awake in the next couple of weeks as we launch an app called Be Local, which will be, right now we're doing the recruitment of businesses, but it will be a reward program that allows you to get rewarded as a user and businesses to actually get reimbursed by the city for those rewards, which is another way in which we're helping businesses. So I will be coming back to say it's live now, go download it and use it to go support your favorite local businesses. And then I think the other piece is aside from actually going and spending your money is getting your friends and your networks to learn about Boston's businesses. There's so many incredible places to visit, and the more that people know about them, typically and in historically, we've had people just spend a lot of time downtown. And while we are working on getting more local businesses into the downtown kind of high traffic areas, I also think that every single neighborhood in the city of Boston is its own incredible place that is so diverse, so culturally important and just different, right? Every neighborhood is different from the other. So I highly encourage everyone here to spend the next, couple of weeks eating out outside at all the incredible outdoor dining establishments. Go check out that little boutique or that, that retail, shop around the corner, those ethnic food markets that exist all over the city, and just go check it out. Go see if there's something that is interesting of you. There's also so much incredible public art popping up that gives you a reason to go visit some of those neighborhoods you might not know.
Yeah, and hopefully with the beautiful weather and the end of winter, people will be able to be out there and be back onto our main streets again. So Tony, I want to turn to you. More and more young people are getting involved in politics and being active in local affairs. What type of change do you hope this results in, and what do you want people to be involved with?
I think it's a very interesting time to get into the public square because a lot of millennials and Gen X and Gen Z and other folks are just starting to be a lot more engaged civically and a lot more aware. And also, I think one of the biggest opportunities, and especially for groups like, Spark Boston and other, young people, is to, really establish meaningful relationships. And one of the great things about, COVID and, the world getting shut down is, accessibility, right? Like you can kind of punch above your weight now with the type of people that you want to reach out to and engage with. And that's just, I always, pride myself and, my family and, my dad and, about watering your plants, right? Who are you reaching out to and being intentional and having, targeted conversations, that are kind of, mutually beneficial, right? Right now, you could probably, send an email, right, to a CEO of somewhere, right, and connect with him, or like an elected official, right, rather than just get handed off to their staffer. With the whole Zoom world, you don't have to wait, right, for a time to meet with somebody at City Hall or at the State House or another municipality and travel there and go through security. You can meet with somebody from the comfort of your own home. So I think the opportunity for folks to increase their networks is huge, right? Just, there are so many people that I meet with that, like, I know I can punch above my weight and meet with them. And there are so many other people who are like mentees and other folks that I honestly may have not had time, just to meet with so many people. They just, have access. So I think that's the, how to be targeted with, being intentional and building your network is vastly important. But, I think we're at a given time, this is probably the resurgence of a social justice movement in 2020, probably one of the biggest of our lifetime. So a lot of folks are civically engaged around, knowing what that means, right? Knowing what elected officials do and how to hold them accountable rather than just being, kind of like cosmetically aware. So I think, it's a different time now, different game now. I think the public sector is, a lot more enticing for folks, especially young people, especially folks, coming out of college. So I think there are huge gains and definitely a pathway to get involved.
Great. Aisha, what sort of change are you hoping to see with involvement of more young people?
I think the change I really want to see is that the young people that are most affected by issues get more involved. Just in my experiences, I see, most times the young people that are involved don't live in the city. And, they come here to, fight issues that are marginalizing young people of color. And we have to just kind of change that mindset that those young people that are experiencing poverty, racism, and homelessness, and all the other issues that are going on, and more especially gender preferences, are having a profound impact on some of our young people. So unfortunately, sometimes when you're marginalized in those instances, it makes it difficult for young people to kind of want to engage and get involved. But I would like to see that change. I would like to see our young people of color who are most affected get involved and start the change mechanism that they want to see in their communities.
Aisha, you take pride in your journey and your background coming from a hardworking family. Why is it important for more young people of color, as you mentioned, to be involved?
I believe that young people can't expect change if you don't get involved. And I specifically, I know it's young people of color, but I just want to specifically speak to young women. I think that there's a lot of critical issues that affect Black women, most importantly, and overcome a wide ranging of lack of economic opportunity, inadequate health access, housing, education, a lot of things. And if we are not intentional in making sure our young Black women are building confidence to want to become civically engaged, then we're doing a disservice to them. And as a Black woman who worked hard, I can remember when I had my son and I went into the yellow pages and picked a lawyer to work for, and I told him, if you give me a chance, I'll work for, I'll intern. Just give me a chance, and I'll prove to you that that I deserve a place here in your law firm. And I did that, and I worked hard, and he gave me a job. I became a litigation paralegal. Went to Roxbury Community College to get the certificate, and so, but I had to think back and understand why it was important for me to take that journey, because then I can tell a story to another young Black woman about how to build your confidence and don't let people who want to tell you no say yes. And that means getting civically engaged so you can make pipelines for other women of color to then go down that road. We have to think about also that 34% of Black women make less than white men. Same education experiences, but make less than white men. In order to make those changes, we have to get involved. Don't allow people to put you in a box. And lastly, I just want to end with this. Sometimes there's a fear of wanting to speak up, speak out. Don't let that fear overcome you taking a chance or trying.
That's great. You all have made a wonderful case for why young people should be involved in politics. and what sort of change that you'd like to see. What resources are available for young people to be involved? How can people step up and be part of our local or state politics?
I think it's free to get involved in almost everything, right? So I think it depends on what your passion is, right? Everybody has a passion. Everybody has a role to play in their community. And that community doesn't necessarily mean where you live. That community can be your job. That community can be your church. It could be your community center, your fitness, whatever thing that you're passionate about. I think that there's always a way to get involved a little bit further. If you are really active in your neighborhood, and you should, join the neighborhood association. That gets you access to like what's going on in your direct community. If you, enjoy working with other people, like go to the neighborhood, nonprofit or a nonprofit that you're connected with and volunteer there. I think getting involved has to be beyond politics. Voting is absolutely 100% the most important civic duty that any of us have. However, I think the responsibility we have to one another in our communities is just as important. And so that, if you work and there's a project that you'd be excited to do at work that isn't necessarily adding more work to your profile, but rather giving you an opportunity to engage with your colleagues or do something different, those are the ways that I think change matters. And those are the ways in which every single person can get involved in their community in different ways. But I think going to what Chief Miller just alluded to, her passion and her grit and perseverance and ability to kind of put herself out there to get a job. I mean, those are the things that I think most people that don't do that, it's because they're afraid of what that will mean. But one of my biggest lessons is if you never ask, you'll never know. And, the worst thing that can happen is you're in the same spot that you were 10 minutes ago, right before you made that ask. A no is not a negative thing. A no just opens up a different door. It points you in a different direction. And so my recommendation for all young people, young professionals, but also youth in our communities is make those asks. Figure out what you're passionate about and figure out, you take that passion and turn it into something new, a project, something that you can get involved with, something that you can connect with other people for. Because even though college and, your career and all of those things, you'll get there. But the network you build along the way is probably the most important thing that you're doing. The other thing I would just very quickly say is that I think it's really important for young people to truly explore different career paths, right? I'm really frustrated when I see statistics from colleges and universities, from graduate programs or, BA programs, and you see the statistics of who's getting what degrees. And part of that is, we tend to direct people and people of color, immigrants, women, we tend to go into social services, we tend to go into these types of fields, but there are ways to help your community and ways to build a career around that outside of those. We need more female planners, we need more women and people of color in accounting and legal and all these incredible spaces that make a really significant impact on our communities. We need to see more of that representation. And I'm too old for that at this point, but I recommend folks, who are thinking about a career, to explore, go to these. There's so many panels, so many free things to get involved with, right now, especially in a virtual world where you can just learn about what people do every day. And if you're interested in that, explore, take a class, do an online webinar or a workshop. There's so many great resources out there that allow you to then build the life that you want, right? Even if you don't know what you want to be when you grow up, taking a little bit of time to explore, I think, is one of the most important things you can do for your community in the long term, because you are then building and investing in yourself to then be a more engaged member of your community, whatever that community might be.
One of the ways that we can help young professionals and others is through mentorship. And of course, it's easier to follow the path that someone else in front of you has broken. Tony, I want to ask you a question. What does mentorship mean to you, and how have mentors helped you throughout your path?
Yeah, I think mentorship is interesting because it's also not like a one size fits all, right? You could be a mentor and help somebody, with time and swinging a bat and shooting a ball, or you could, help somebody, with a significant resource like a job or an internship, right? So I think, just being a youth basketball coach, and my dad founded No Books, No Ball, which is the largest and oldest basketball program in Boston. So a bunch of folks are engaged, civically and also socially, through that. Just working with young people, I think it's interesting because it's not figurative, but it's literal to say that young people are our future. Like, they're going to grow up, we're going to get old, and then they're going to be in the spot that we are in now. So that's what I think. I always try to be helpful in some sort of way, right? Like, there are people that reach out to me right now that I don't have time to actually help in a way that I may want to, but we figure out the way that is helpful for them at that time. Like, whether it's pointing them in the right direction for a job, whether it's giving them, some advice and connecting some dots and making sure they have another relationship, because I think that's important as well. And I think, just the biggest thing that I always tell young people is to, information is like free, like the internet and the wave of, there's so many things. I mean, everybody here is probably a quasi expert at something that's totally not even related to your field, right? By just looking up something, whether you have kids or if you have a house or if you have a dog or a cat or a bike, right? You Google something and then all of a sudden 20 minutes in, 30 minutes in, you're like, you can talk the jargon enough of somebody who that is really their thing, right? So I tell young people, all the time to, do enough research to make sure that you can be involved in meaningful conversations that can continue to, build a relationship and push you to the next phase, because it's all about taking steps forward, because you kind of have to meet people where they are. And everybody, isn't going to be receptive to the way you want to help them at that time. But I always think it's about being intentional. I think we try to hold on to so many things so delicately as far as like resources, because maybe we haven't got them that easy. And then we're so afraid for young people to fail. And I think some of the biggest opportunities that I've had in my life, it was because I was in an opportunity that was still high level, right? But I still had the opportunity to fail. And it wasn't like a real L. Like, I didn't fail and it was like, oh my God, now you're like, it was, an opportunity for me to fail and still have support. So I just try to, model that and make sure young people, still have the opportunity, to continue to play at a high level, but also if they fall short, continue to support them.
Aisha, how have mentors helped you?
My biggest mentor was my mom, to be honest. I watched her from the time I was in elementary school, work 2 jobs to make sure that I had all my needs and wants. And she always would instill in me that if you want it, you go for it. And I'll be here if the building crashes, I'll be right here. We can pick up the pieces and start all over again. And as I've gone on in my life and have been met with obstacles, I've met a lot of people along the way who were able to assist me in some of my dreams and aspirations. And having that person, I always think of mentorship as having that person who will be there to listen to what you have to say and some of your dreams and some of the things that you want to do, and offer any type of advice and how to get there. When I started this role, I reached out to a bunch of people, and before I could reach out to Tony, Tony had already reached out to me. And so I want to publicly say, and although we don't have a mentor-mentee, Tony was already in the realm as far as I'm concerned. And we need more people like that who don't wait for someone to call you. He texted me and said, "Congratulations, if you need me, I'm here." That's a mentor. Now, whether he knew it or not, he was already reaching out to me to let me know, look, if it gets crazy, you can call me. And not failing, but sometimes you can get into ways that you may feel like I may feel like I'm failing, but he opened the door to say, I got you. And we need to have more people like that. And unfortunately, I don't feel like we do. But I wanted to, when I saw Tony on this panel, I got nervous and I said, oh boy. But I just wanted to publicly say that. And I'm thankful because he didn't have to do it. And if we can create more pipelines like Tony did for me on December 8th, to reach out to me to just say congratulations and I got you, that's being a mentor. And I appreciate you, Tony, for that. And so sometimes mentorship doesn't come and you have to sign up for something, or someone that you grew up with. It's creating those relationships along the way. And Tony turning around to grab somebody else's hand creates a outlet for me to now I want to do it to somebody else.
That's great, Aisha. And I think that's all something for all of us to keep in mind in our formal and informal relationships. So Natalia, we have a question from the audience for you, coming back to small business assistance. You talked about how consumers and residents can help small businesses, but what about companies? What about the members of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce? What can they do to support small businesses?
That's a great question, and I'm glad the audience asked that. So thanks. So I think one of the easiest ways that any company, organization can really support small businesses is look at what you're spending money on. Look at what the company, where you're doing catering, and obviously we're not doing catering right now because we're all virtual, but as you plan for FY22 and as you plan for kind of the expenses that your business takes on for employees, gift cards, things like that, like how are you engaging with your local community, right? How are you engaging with local businesses that way? I think as it pertains to recovery, I urge people to think about some of the strategic partnerships that exist out there, right? So how do you as a company support these partnerships? There are great organizations out there, that if you want to support through donations, it's a really, there are nonprofits out there working with small businesses every day, and I think that there are ways in which those funds and that support can go that way. Also volunteering. I want to do a quick plug for the Boston Main Streets, right? These are not independent 501c3s. These are independent nonprofits that have boards, that have fundraising responsibilities, and then on top of that, that have volunteer opportunities. So there are ways to support small businesses without necessarily having to, shop there. And I think for businesses in particular, larger companies that want to engage with the local economy more, reach out to us, smallbiz@boston.gov. Reach out, tell us what you want to do. We can point you in the right direction, get you connected with some businesses that may be able to help you with that. We also put together the Black and Brown business list. That is just a self-proclaimed directory on boston.gov that features businesses led by people of color, women across the city who could maybe fulfill some of those needs. So if you are printing T-shirts for your company, go to one of our local print shops, one of our local businesses, in Boston. If you're, when we start going back to the office, those catering opportunities, those birthday celebrations, if you have a new office space, commission the art in that office with one of our local artists that are also business owners. There's lots of ways in which businesses can do that. And I encourage that engagement with our office. So you can shoot me an email. You can shoot us an email at smallbiz@boston.gov.
Great. Thanks. So I'm really sad that we're almost at 12:30 because this has been an incredible conversation. I feel like we could go for another hour. and hear and learn some incredible things from these three panelists. So I want to wrap up with the final question. This past year has been incredibly difficult for so many people. You know, COVID-19 has shined a new light on pre-existing disparities, racial disparities, gender disparities, geographic, economic, a whole host. And it's been a very difficult time for so many. But you all are at the forefront of government and being more inclusive, and the new generation of our government leaders. What makes you optimistic after coming through these difficult times? What are you looking forward to as you work to build a more inclusive government?
Well, I guess just in short, to listen more to our young folks. I am very optimistic about what our future holds based on what we see right now. But if we don't listen, we'll be sitting here again having this particular discussion. I'll be 70 years old waiting, and my grandson will be on a panel, but he won't be discussing George Floyd and Breonna Taylor. He'll be discussing same old rhetoric, but different people. And so I think that we need to take this opportunity just to listen to our young folks, promote and empower them, and invite them into the room and invite them to the table so we can listen and build that generational gap. I say all the time when I'm in community meetings that more young people need to come out, but the older generation needs to sit back and listen and see what they have to say. And so I'm hopeful for the future.
Great.
Yeah, I think a weird way, I'm excited. People of color are resilient, right? Like I think, we show up in so many key indicators, as, at the bottom, when it's something good, and at the top when it's something bad, right? And, I think that, a lot of, tough issues, not even action, but like just talking about them, there's a lot more receptiveness to, just figuring out action solutions and then actually tangible solutions, that it's a real exciting time, because even in places and spaces where we all probably work and where all the audience works, they have probably had, uncomfortable discussions about making change, because change isn't easy, but it's also not comfortable. So I see that, happening, in my workplace as well. And others, probably do, in their workplaces. So I feel, excited in a way. I mean, I think, 2020, was tough for everybody in, many different ways. So it's kind of a level soundboard, right? So everybody, was kind of uncomfortable in some sort of way. That, this year with, the emergence of, increased vaccination efforts and, just support around small businesses and, support around education, so many key indicators, there's, different support measures that are, kind of queued up for that segment. But I'm just excited, man. Warm weather just kind of makes me, between Fridays and warm weather, those two things that, go together well. So I'm just, hopeful and excited, and just trying to stay optimistic. So that's pretty much how I'm feeling.
Yeah, I'm going to echo what has been said. I think we are in historic moments for lots of different reasons, from it being a time where we get to grow, right, as a community. I think what Tony just said about being uncomfortable is the most important thing. Everyone needs to embrace kind of the change and embrace that discomfort, because that means you're doing it right if you're not comfortable, right? None of us know what the future entails, but I think we're in a position to get to write it. And what this year has brought, I think is a different level of awareness for everyone, whether it's racial inequities, whether it's health inequities, whether it's transportation inequities, whether it's, mental health. There's so many different things that have been exposed through the COVID-19 pandemic that I think allows us to really shape the future we want to see. And I think we need to be vocal about that. I think, the city absolutely has a role to play in all these things. So does the Commonwealth. But I think every individual has a just as important role to play in getting to the solutions that we want to see. And I don't think that it's a silver bullet. I don't think that it's one thing that will get us to that place. But the optimism I feel is around young people, organizing, even if they don't know that they're organizing, young people leveraging technology and the tools that are available in order to expose and get connected. I'm really optimistic at the next couple of years for Boston, but for our nation, because I do think there is an awakening that is happening, that is allowing people to have tough conversations, feel that discomfort, and really be able to do something about it for the first time, I think, in many generations. And like I said earlier, all this change is incremental. None of it is going to happen overnight. And if people are expecting something to change from black to white, from purple to orange, it doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of hard work and it takes a lot of building. And that incremental change, you get to a point where you don't realize all the little things, and then you're like, oh, we're here. But it's going to continue to grow because we as humans have to evolve. We have to continue to learn and listen. And I'm just really excited for it. So thank you for having us.
Well, I want to thank you all for being part of this panel, for helping so many young professionals learn about what they can do and how they can bring change to our city and state, and just for doing that day to day in your professional lives. And I'm going to throw it back to Hannah.
Wow, thank you all so much. I have taken so many notes over here. I'd like to add something that I'm optimistic about is that the three of you are leading the charge. I know, again, with the notes I took, I'm sure there was a lot of engagement in the chat that we're all leaving here today feeling inspired. Tony, I learned from you that failure is good, it's okay, and it's exciting. Natalia, building and investing in yourself is so important for the success of our region and our nation and our world. Aisha, the chain reaction of reaching out, just being kind and listening to someone even before you really know that that's what you need or that's what they need. So thank you all for sharing what you've shared today. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time every day in the work that you all do. Before we close, I just want to highlight that we have a lot of other great events coming up. We'll share the information that Aisha, Natalia, and Tony shared today in their social media so you can continue cheering them on along their way. Next month, we have an event featuring Irene Lee of May. We hope you can join us to hear her words of wisdom and also make some dumplings while we're at it. And then finally, don't forget to follow City Awake on social media. Again, we have a lot of really great events coming up and some incredible social experiences as well. So with that, thank you all. Thank you to your panelists. Thank you for joining us today. Signing off.